Hello, my name's Ken Crook, and I'm going to tell you about the interest that I have still in the Royal Australian Navy, mainly through my father's service, and one of my sons served as well. My father went into the Navy in 1919. He was born in 1900 in Dandenong, and at the age of World War I was happening until 1918, from 1914 to 1918, and his mother wouldn't sign the papers. She didn't want him to go into something that might be more dangerous than where he lived in Dandenong. So he joined when he was 19, and he was in the Navy till 1926 on various ships. And then he left for a little while and couldn't get a job during the Great Depression. He was still in Navy Reserve. So when Australia started to, after the Great Depression, start to arm itself again and things became relatively normal, he went back in full-time into the Navy, again on various ships, including HMAS Sydney too. And he was due to come out of the Navy, and World War II broke out. So he was in until 1946. I can vaguely remember, I think, when he came back. I was born in 1943, so when he came out of the Navy in 1946, I was only 3 years old. So I don't remember him in uniform. I've a lot of photos of him, but growing up in a war service home area and living in that time just after World War II, the whole population related to the war. Everything that happened was either before the war, during the war, after the war, or because of the war. Whether it was a death, a marriage, or any circumstance whatsoever was related to this most traumatic event that had ever happened. This is a scrapbook that I have, and the first half of the book was mainly articles from newspapers that my brother put in a brown paper that looks like handmade. Of course, everything was short during the war, including paper. It was difficult to get mail through, so newspapers were the main source of information, so they're eagerly sought. These articles here are from World War II, so as I flick through the pages, they're going from the end of World War II, and my input to the scrapbook now is starting with swap cards out of the Maltese cereal packets that you had in the morning for breakfast. Had cards in, and these little cards were of chips. I saw a lot of things, remnants of the war, where people were buying surplus military equipment. There were jeeps on the road, and there was kids were wearing army belts and wearing shoulder bags, and things that the military used were sold in disposal shops, and there was a market for it because it was well made, and if you wanted anything, particularly outdoor equipment, it was a good place to buy fairly cheaply good quality stuff that lasted almost forever. So a lot of children were wearing that sort of thing. But all the kids in all the schools, what did your dad do during the war? Because everybody was affected by it. There was nobody that said, oh, there was elements here that didn't agree with the war, but everybody was affected by it. There's no way you didn't know the war was happening, because everybody was involved in it. And I can remember living at Parkdale, which is on Port Phillip Bay, during the 1950s. The Navy were at target practice in Port Phillip Bay, and you could hear boom, boom, boom as people were down the beach. What's that? And the ships were out there, the target practice, because there was no guarantee that World War II wasn't going to break out again. In the late 40s or early 1950s, there were other threats. Yeah, I didn't know, couldn't understand why there was the war. I do now, but as a child, everybody talked about it, and the book, there was still a lot of articles in newspapers about it, and films. There was many films made in the 1950s, World War II films. Some were black and white, some were colour. So, and then there was the Anzac Day March, which he would march down at Mordialloc, in the main street of Mordialloc was closed off, and there was quite hundreds of people would march there, and then we'd race up to Melbourne, and then he'd march in the Anzac Day March to the Shrine. And it took a long while for the march to go past, because there were tens of thousands of people marching, because all those people had just come back.